Hello everyone. Thanks for joining the session today. In today's session, we'll speak about the data management series that is part 2. In last event, we spoke about the introduction to data entities. Maybe we saw how the data entities structure was there. Maybe how we had our database structure defined and other areas. Okay, we spoke about AX DB database and AX DW database and other areas. Okay, so in this session, we'll speak about different concepts, or in the different journal we'll take into this session. This session is going to be completely on a technical basis of the things. So we'll speak about how to create the data entities, how to manage the data entities for the new concepts which are getting arrived. Okay, so if you have a concepts like if you have a concepts like to create a new entities. Okay, so we'll just try to create a new entities right there, and we'll speak about the existing entities that are available in the system as well. Okay, and this will be a kind of a 1 hour session. So in this session, the agenda of this session would be something like why data entities. So first we'll speak about what is the purpose of data entities. So then we'll speak about the categories, different categories that are available in the entities. Then we'll speak about the scenario. Okay, I'm going to take a demo scenario today to create one of the data entities for truck maintenance, maybe. Okay, truck, we have a truck maintenance. Okay, for that, I'm going to create one event. And after that, we are going to speak about the data management framework which is available. So after that, we'll speak about the copy data functionality. Okay, fine. Okay, so then we'll speak about data packages which are available in the system. So then again, we'll speak about the list of useful templates. We have different templates that are available within Dynamics. Okay, we'll just speak about different templates. So let me jump into one of the concepts called, first, why data entities? Okay, data entities are important in such a ways like, when you attended the previous session, entities are required for exporting the data or like for importing the data. Okay, for both the cases, we need entities to be available in the system. So in this session, we'll speak about how to create that entities. Okay, so custom entities. Okay, how to get that created. We saw in the last session, this is about, we had a AXDB database, and in the AXDB database, which is going to get it communicated with SSRS report, forms, and other areas. Okay, so then we had some external application. So that external application is going to get communicated with Dynamics. Okay, now we are going to see a scenario where, how that external application is going to get it communicated with Dynamics. Okay, so when we have any external application like which is hosted on Power Apps or Flow or mobile applications or any other data access applications, so which has to communicate with Dynamics in such a way that, so we have tables, maybe we have sales orders within Dynamics, or like we have purchase orders within Dynamics. Okay, everything has to be exposed as a service, or like, we have to create a purchase order automatically by using the third-party applications or whatever. Okay, so for doing all those things activities, we don't expose the original tables. Let's say we have a table called sales table. We won't expose our sales table or the purchase table directly. So instead, what we'll do is, we'll just go ahead and try to build an entity. Okay, based upon the entity, what we'll do, we'll just by exposing the entity outside, we'll just try to get the value consumed in the entity first, and after that we'll be passing on to the AXDB database. So this is how it goes. So when external applications want to import the data, or you want to access the data, so it is not like, the direct tables are getting exposed. Here we have a concept called entities that are coming into picture. Okay, that is getting exposed outside, and this entities in turn does not communicate directly with the original tables. Rather than that, it gets communicated with the tables called staging tables. So staging table is a concept where, like, it was available in 2012 as well. What it does is, whenever we have an entity, so before it moves on to the target table, the information comes and sits on the staging table where we can validate the data. So the reason is because when we directly push the data from entity to the target table, like, sales table, cost table, or when a custom group tables, what happens is that the junk data will get sit in the table, which will be dangerous, like okay, to show it in the reports or in the forms. Okay, so sometimes a query may be not properly working if the data directly comes into it. So we have this kind of a filters, like stating we have entities and we have staging tables. Staging table is a place, okay, where any kind of a data can come in and sit inside the staging tables, and we can clean up the staging tables. And after the cleanup activity is done, so then we can just take up the data and push it back to the original tables. Okay, as a whole, this is the architecture how it's getting formed. So having said that, any tables you're going to get it created, maybe any transaction tables or any master tables you wanted to get it created. If you want that table to expose outside, maybe you wanted to move the data of this table outside, or like okay, you want to get it integrated with any other applications, then you'll have to create an entity. Like every field in a table you create a EDT, and for every user navigations path or user text, you'll be creating a label, right? So it is must, like okay, as a developer you should be able to tell to the end users, like okay, how my table will be exposed outside. So it is like okay, only I have a table like 100 fields in the table available now. So instead of having like 100 tables, 100 fields exposing outside, I can just expose only few fields outside. Okay, even that is possible by using the entities. Okay, that's the reason we won't expose the direct AXDB, the original tables outside. Rather than that, we expose only the entities outside. Okay, which does the process. So when you speak about entities are nothing but it is an updatable view. So you would have heard about a concept called view. So views are nothing but which can pull up the data from multiple tables. And after that, what it can do is it can try to show in a report, or we can just show in a form, or it can be accessed through a query. Okay, so entities are like similar concepts like a view, but this is called as an updatable view. This may sound like a bit weird, because views are made only for clubbing the values from multiple tables, and it's not for insert of the values, right? But here, what happens when you just try to join the other tables, we can define those tables that are going to get joined. Those will be of the read-only type, which mean to say that will be available only for the export. Maybe when you're trying to import it, so the actual values won't get imported into the tables. So if you wanted to import multiple tables values, okay, there is a concept called composite entities, okay, which we'll be speaking at later point of time. Okay, so just as an idea, as an overview for this slide, every table should have an entity created, and the entity should be having an underlying staging table created. Okay, anyway, we are going to see it on a practical way today for getting this done. So let me move forward. So speaking about the entity categories, we have different category for the tables actually. Okay, so we have a table categories like master tables and transaction tables, worksheet tables, and other things. So even entity is also kind of a table or kind of an updatable view. So we categorize them into a different types basically. The first type is going to be parameter actually. So parameter, as you know, this is like a functional behavior parameters, any setup data, maybe any key information you wanted to store. Depending on this, your application will start working. Okay, this can be like, okay, accounts payable, accounts GL setup kind of a data, or it can be any data, okay, which is saying, okay, one-time customer, what is the minimum charges for a particular service. All those things you can just store in a parameters. So if you want to create any data entity for these kind of a tables, then you will be going for parameter kind of a tables. Okay. So the next table would be reference tables. Okay. As the name says, suggest references. Okay. Here we have some tables like unit tables, dimensions, or like okay, tax code tables, which is used to provide references for the other applications. Okay. If you have any kind of a tables, okay, which is providing a reference to other tables and other things, those come under a picture called reference tables. You can categorize that. Again, like, okay, why this categorization is required? Why? Because, okay, we have a place where we can just show and filter the entities based upon this types. So next is going to be master. Master does not require any introduction, because we have customer master, vendor master, projects, and other areas, okay, which you term to be a main tables. Okay, those we term to be master tables out here. Next we have a documents table. document table corresponds to any worksheet data that is coming from the system. It can be either a sales order, purchase order, or a journals, or any operational business data that comes into it. Okay, so but worksheet data can be converted into a transaction data at later point of time. Transaction means okay, any general journal, posted records or something like that. Okay, that comes under a transaction category. It's a transaction category. So here mostly on customer transaction, posted transactions. Okay, this you can just export and keep it. Maybe I'm not sure about import. Maybe any open things we can just get it imported, but posted things it's not required for the other environment to hold it up. Okay, so these are the different categories into picture. So to go along here, so first we had parameter type. This is for the parameters. Then for the reference type, this is for the smaller references. Then we had master types. This is for customer table, vendor table, and other areas. Then we had document types for the sales order, for the purchase order, sales orders, and other things. Next, we have transaction types. Okay, these are the various categories how the entities has been split up. Like tables has been split up. Now entities has been split up into the same way. Okay. So having read about the entity categories, okay, it is important for us to know about the data management framework as well, because the data management framework is a very nice feature that has been introduced in 365. It has been like okay, it has been like deriving from the 2012. Like okay, Microsoft has given us a package, then it has come within the application. Now it has come as a whole module within Dynamics. Okay, where like a functional consultant has different opportunities to go ahead and okay pick it up the field, saying okay whether this field should be imported now or this field should be excluded now, or can I add a new field which is not part of the entity only. Yeah, so right now it is not present. Can I go ahead and add it? So everything is possible. So by using data management framework. So these are the different parameters or the framework setups that are available in system. So first setup is going to be along the shared working directory. So we have a shared working directory defined to mean to say that okay, every Excel export and import you're going to make it available, right? So what happens? Okay, it requires a temporary space where like okay the processing will happen for the files. So if this shared working directory is not present, maybe you'll be getting an error. So to just make sure whether the shared working directory is available, you can just click on the validate button. So if the folder is not available, so then it's going to show you an error. So how to fix it? It's very simple. Go to this particular directory called C:. Under the temp, try to check if the DAX of folder is there. If the DAX of folder is not there, so then you can just right click and create a folder. And that is going to get this done. Maybe you should be from the admin privileges to get it created so that it can be accessed, because it involves file-based access, right? So admin privileges may be a must for this. Next, we have a service connection URL. So if there are any services that are going to get it exposed, like OData and other stuff, how it is going to get it exposed? Okay, it is going to exposed by using this service connection URL, which is present here. And since this is going to be the demo machine, we have a local host that is specified. For the other machines like a production environment or UAT, this may vary depending on the things. And you need not go ahead and try to modify it here. This comes as a inbuilt one. Next, we have a concept called ignore error. So while importing the data or while exporting the data, if there are any error occurs, okay, do we need to ignore the error and just bypass the error? Okay, most probably we don't do that, so we'll set it to no. But in such cases, okay, you will have to go ahead and ignore the error and you try to just get the data into staging table, and you feel like okay, in the staging table I'll try to sort out the duplicate records or any validations sort out will be happening right there. So you can just unmark this parameter, set it to no, and you can just get that done. Okay, so sorry, you have to set it to yes and you have to get it done. And after that, there is an option called create error file. So in case of import or export, if there are any error occurs, okay, whether I need to go ahead and sort it out and creating a new file or what, okay, I can just get it done by using this parameter by checking this up. But usually, okay, we don't create the error file. The reason is because we'll go into the jobs, whichever we create. And within the job, we'll try to see the view staging data, and the staging data will be able to see the errors that are coming up. So we won't mostly worry on creating an error file. Maybe for a larger imports, this may require. So a shorter one, it's not required in that case. So next is like, okay, we have something called remove duplicates. Duplicate records may come and it may appear like, okay, multiple entries are going to happen. with the same ID field, unique ID field. Okay, so if you feel like okay, there are multiple entries or things are coming, how you want to mitigate it? Okay, whether you want to remove the duplicates automatically by the system only, or like okay, you want to get the data into the staging table, and after that okay, you will feel like okay, I can go now and remove the duplicates. Because in the view staging data, you have an option to remove the duplicates. Maybe in the demo I can just show that. Usually we'll set it to no in that case. Okay, this is all about an overview of the framework parameters. The important parameter I would say is this one, like a temp DAXF. So which means to say that okay, without this you will not be able to import or export the data. So the next one is going to be on framework parameters. So if you feel like okay, there is something called entity settings here. You created an entity and you feel like okay, the entity is not coming up for you. Maybe in the front end, it is not coming up for you because we'll be creating the entity in Visual Studio, and we expect the front end operation to be doing in the data management framework. At some time, there may be some cache issues which can occur, like okay, the entities won't appear through the front end for going to do any imports or exports. So in that case, what you can do is okay, you can just go ahead and say I can just refresh the entity list. Once you click on the refresh entity list, system will try to pick up, it goes and loads the data that is available from the list of entities, and it just puts up here stating whether if it is not available, it tries to add it to the entity list. Okay, in some time I'll show you what is this entity list, because we can manage the entities within the framework itself. Within UI itself, we can just see what are all the entities that are available. Okay. And next, we have something called configuring entity execution parameters. Okay, so entity execution parameters are something like we have this data sources basically. Okay, when you click on this, it opens up the configure data source, which mean to say that okay, what are the different types of data sources I can use? The most commonly used data sources would be CSV file, or or it can be an XML file or an Excel file. Okay, or there is a concept called package. I can just show you today okay, how the package works. But apart from this, okay, you have something called TAF file or any other files of your own format that are coming. You can just still go ahead and manage it as well by creating concepts like this. First, you wanted to specify okay, the type to be file. So the next you wanted to see okay, it is going to be a delimited file, because it is going to work. We are going to export large number of data. So we are going to say it is going to be a delimited one. And in the next point, we have to say whether first row header you're going to mark, because every file that will be coming up, right? Maybe in case of CSV file, first row header may be marked. But in the case of XML files, it is not required. So, and in your case, if you're going to define a custom format of a file, you can say whether the first row will be coming is always in header. Maybe in the text file also, they can give something like, okay, direct data they can give, or they can give a header followed by the data. So if you want to remove the values or don't consider the value that is from the first row, you can just say first row is header to be marked as, so the value will not be considered in that. So next we have something called a row delimiter and a column delimiter, and what is the text qualifier that is going to be used. Okay, so in the column delimiter I can say okay, colon, which means to say everything will be separated by a colon or something. Okay. And next thing, we have something called Unicode information, some regional settings. You wanted to have time zone preferences and language local. We have some code page codes that are available. So by using this, okay, we can just split up the data and apply the regional settings onto your file formats. So you can just go ahead and configure this if you have such any. And this is what I was speaking about, the entity list. Whenever you open the data management system, you will be able to see the list of entities that are available. Maybe in the demo, I can just show you. So these are the entities. It is of the two types. We have two types of entities. One is going to be the normal entity, and the second type is going to be composite entity. Entities are like for every tables, a new entity will be created. But when you have a relations like okay, header and line relations, you have something like that. Okay, in that case, we'll be creating like a sales order header and sales order line. So those kind of entities are composite entities. And again, like okay, we have a different sessions for getting it done. And here it says about okay, which type or which target entity. And there is an option called set based processing. In some cases, you don't want to insert a line one by one. Okay, rather than that, you have to go ahead and say, I'm going to insert the lines on a bulk basis. Okay, if you're going to do it on a bulk basis, then you can just say set-based processing. You can just get it enabled. Once you enable, no validations will happen on the line level. It is going to insert bulk record into the table. So you can just do this. Okay, if you are very sure about what you are doing, I think okay, I can just have a different session that is coming in for getting explaining about the set-based processing later point of time. And this is all about a basic concept of the entities. And let us jump into the demo of it. So in this demo, we'll speak about okay, how to create a new data entity for one of the concepts, and how to do a copy the data between the companies. Okay, I'm going to create an entity now. So now I'm going to copy the entity data between different companies. And finally, I can just show you about some data packages. Okay, so if I have any data package which has to be extracted, and it can be put onto a different machine altogether. So I can just do that. It's not a data push between the within the environment. It is the data push, okay, across the environments. Okay, copy data is like within the environment. Data package is like across the environments. Okay, so this is what is the scenario I've been trying to do. So customer like, okay, customer business is focusing on delivery of item within the states. Okay, they are just doing some delivery process. Okay, customer orders, they will create a sales order and they will try to deliver the items. On delivering, what they face problem is like, okay, the transportation charges are a very bigger headache for them in that case. So what they do is like, okay, they got an help from one of the third party application, and they said, okay, they are going to find the best rates. Like, okay, we have something called hotel booking now. So hotel bookings were like very complex earlier. So like we have now trivago.coms or like goibo.coms coming into or make my trip. So they find, okay, the cheaper rate that is available in the market and they're trying to give it to us, right? Similarly, they got one of the transportation customer who is going to fetch along between the different transportations, and they're going to give the best delivery rates within the kilometers. But what they say is, okay, they hold an API, and for the transaction to should happen within Dynamics, okay, we have created a new screen. Okay, I can show you that screen. We have created a new screen, and in this screen, the rates will be applied. Okay, depending on the customer group, basically. Okay, the customer is going to be a premium customer, or it is going to be just a retail customer. We can have a higher rate. If it's going to be a long-term customer, we can just have a lesser rate for him. Okay, depending on that, we can adjust the rate within Dynamics itself. Okay, they have built a functionality, and now they're expecting data to be inserted from the third-party applications, or from Dynamics, the data should pass to the third-party application. Either way, it should work. Okay, so if they have to do so, then we can just go ahead and try to do it by using our business process. Okay, let me open up my machine to just show you that what is the thing that has been done. Okay, I think I hope my screen is visible for you. So I created one of the applications here, okay, which is going to give you. I created a few informations like, okay, some EDTs I created, like 0 to 50. What is sorry, from 0 to 5 kilometers? What is the charge? And from 6 to 20, what is the charge and other things? Okay, let me show you in the front end so that you have an idea on the application what has been built first. Okay, so I'll go to modules. Today I created a new form called DEZ road transport charges, and this is the place where I expect the data to be coming inside the Dynamics. Okay, so here we have a charges ID and customer group. So depending on the vehicle type, or let's say a three-wheeler, and the maximum capacity it can hold is 750 kilograms. And for 0 to 5 kilometers, this is a charge. Some 6 to 20 kilometers, this is a charge. So these are the rates for the customer group RD001 to RD008. These are for the customer groups 10. Okay, but if you could see for the customer group 20, the way the rate varies, because the customer group 20 may be one of the premium customers for them. Let's say they are the major customers for them. Okay, so for them, okay, we just decrease the price, like okay, 14 above 50 kilometer if they're going. So these kind of charges will come from external application and sit into this here, and now they are expecting like we have to expose this table outside, because here we created just a tables, like we created a DC transport charges table here, and within the transport charges table I added the fields customer group, and here I added the relation between the customer group. Okay, and this is very simple. I created one of the forms here, and this form is also having only one data source, which is going to get the data from this particular grid. Okay, and it is going to show you some information from the table. So now in the usability wise, it is okay. The user is able to go ahead and try to insert the values into it or fine. But in some cases, okay, these values are getting varied every now and then. Like okay, so every day this value should be updated. So and you have a lot of customer groups in the system, and there are multiple companies that you're dealing with. Okay, every company it varies. The transportation charges varies. Okay, it'll be very difficult for one of the person to sit in and key in the values daily. So they're expecting an entity for this, which can just be exposed outside. So the user can insert the data into this particular entity, and they can just accomplish their operations. Okay, and in some point of time they're trying to copy the data between the companies also. So from one company they are trying to copy the data to other company, and they are expecting like okay, I wanted to create a data package because I wanted to create a new environment where I wanted to place all the charges also available. I don't want to create it newly. Okay, there are three scenarios. We'll take one by one. The first scenario is going to be like okay, how to create an entity for a new table that is available. Okay, so there are two ways you can create an entity. So first is like okay, very simple way. You can just open up the table, right click, and there is an option called add-ins, and there will be an option called create data entity. So once you click on this, the data entity will be created. Okay, but here we'll not have more control on okay, exclude the fields okay in the UI itself before the data entity is getting created. Okay, so we'll not go for this simpler approach. I'll show you the another approach where like okay, we can just create the entity by using wizards also. So to create an entity by using wizard, so I'll right click here and say add, like you are adding any of the items. There is an option called data model. So within the data model, we have data entities. So let us click on this data entity, and the entity name should be something like this. We have the table name as the DZ road transport charges. So we'll give the same thing, road transport charges. And after that, all the entity will be ending up with the name called entity. Okay. It's transport charges. Okay, so we have DZ road transport charges is the actual table name. And since it is going to be defining about the entity, so I'll just end up with the name called entity here. And this is the proper naming convention, how you should create it. So let us say, go ahead and add now. So once you add, system is going to open up a wizard for you. And in this particular wizard, it is going to show you about, okay, how, what is the primary data source from which I wanted to select. So here I'm going to select a primary data source called DZ road transport charges. And this is what is the category I was defining you in the slide. Okay, so whether that will be a master category, parameter category, reference, or a transaction category. So depending on okay, the slides, whatever we discussed, okay, it can be either a master as well, because okay, here the data is going to come and sit, or it can be a reference also, because it specifies about some unit codes and other areas, right? So let me go in master. The reason is because okay, I wanted to add a lot of fields into it at a later point of time, maybe some tracking informations and other stuff. So on a wider picture, I'll see. So then I'll add this to be a master. Okay, fine. So this is over. Next is like, okay, there is an option called enable public API. So when you expose this, when you wanted to expose this particular entity as a OData, okay, we saw in the first series, okay, whenever you wanted to directly access the data, so you'll have to enable the public API. So when you enable the public API, you'll be exposing the data outside as a OData, like a services, okay, without coming and using within the Dynamics AX architecture of data management import or export. You can directly access the entities outside, and by using the entities, we can perform some CRUD operations As well, we can just try to export the data as a JSON, and you can just build any mobile applications out of it. Okay, so all these things are going through the data entity. If you want such an application to get it built, so then we mark this to be enable public API. Fine. So next is like, okay, we have an option called enable data management capabilities. So if you wanted to create any staging tables, which you are going to use it within Dynamics for importing and exporting of the data by using the standard feature of data management capabilities. Okay, if you're going to use that, so then you'll have to mark this parameter, and it is going to automatically create the staging table. As per the slide we saw earlier, so the entity will be getting along with the staging table. It will not be getting along with the original table right here. Okay, the entity will have a pointer between two tables. It's in between as a mediator between the staging table as well as between the original table that is available. Okay, so this entity is tightly linked with the staging table. So this we need not create it separately. So once you mark this, it is going to get created. And after that, we have two other security privileges, okay, which get created automatically to manage, okay, who should access the data or who should not access the data. Again, like, okay, this wizard gives the capability of creating the security privileges. Okay, this looks something similar to workflows, what we created earlier. Okay, so now we are going to use this kind of an entity, this kind of a wizard for creating the entities right here. Okay, so next, I'm clicking on the next button. And in the next button, there is an option like, okay, it is showing you all the values, maybe all the fields. And I set row charges ID to be the mandatory field in the table level. So you could see, okay, it is getting along with the entity level also now. And you can control it. Maybe you wanted to any other fields to be the mandatory fields, or like, okay, it is not necessary like, okay, all the values you should expose it outside. You can just take off one of the value also, not a problem, because okay, the max capacity of the vehicle doesn't matter to get it exposed outside. I don't want to do that. I can do that as well here. Okay, and you don't want to create the field names okay, directly like in the table how it is available. So you can just convert labels also. So you can just see the difference. When I click on this, it is going to convert this to be the labels, and when I just take it off, it is going to actually take it the original field names from the table. Okay, and you have the feasibility of changing the field names also if you wish. And there is a concept called virtual field, which means to say whenever you wanted to create any field apart from the field that is available right here. Okay, because the standard gives you a provision only to use the fields from the table level. And apart from this, okay, my customer is going to give one extra field which I want to accommodate in some other tables, or I want to use it for some other functionalities. We can have a virtual field added. But again, like, okay, we have a next session which is ranging for this speak about, okay, how to deal with this virtual field and how to deal with the computer column also. So there we'll see more about this part. Okay, so now I leave it like this, and there is an option called add data source. So as we saw, we have a relation between the customer groups actually. Okay, so in the table level, we had a relation, right? So if you wanted to get some field values from that customer group, so you can just add it here also and click on the add button. So the moment you click on the add button, what happens? Okay, the data source comes as one of the structure over here. Okay, it gets added. It takes some time. You can see the customer group will there. So when you click on the customer group, you can just go ahead and try to add the fields from the customer group. So once I click on this, it's gonna take some time. So since it's a demo, like, okay, I'll just skip it for this now, and I'll just remove the data source. Okay, I don't want this data source to be available. So having said that, okay, even though if I go ahead and remove the data source, what happens is that, okay, after the entity is created, you can go ahead and add it also at later point of time. Fine. So I think I'm good here with all the fields available. I can click on finish. So now upon clicking on finish, you could see there are some extra nodes that are getting added to the system. So these are called charges entity has got added, and something called staging table has got added, and two privileges has got added. Okay, so now we can open up the entity and we can just provide a proper name for this. Let's say I can say it as, okay, DEZ road transport charges. So I can just quickly try to filter it out. Okay, if I require. Fine. So in this entity, you'll be able to see, okay, list of values, list of structure. This looks similar to the table itself. So when you open the data source, you'll be able to see the data source and the list of fields that I got created from the data source level. And you can add multiple data sources here also. Maybe if you want to add a customer group, maybe you can just go ahead and add it. And there is an option called is read only. So if you set the property called is read only to yes, what happens is that, okay, if you set a customer group as a data source and set this read only, so the customer group will be used only for the export purpose, maybe, while importing the data won't get imported into this particular table. Okay, so if you have wanted that particular functionality to be available, so you can just go ahead and have this one. Okay. So next, there is an option called relations. So instead of specifying the relations, like okay, outer join, inner join, whatever. So you can just specify any kind of a relation, how the data should be getting extracted from this particular data entities. And you have a feasibility to update the valid time state as well. So if you wanted to get the data only on the current time period or something, you can just get it by using these options. Okay. And how you wanted the fetch mode to be available, whether you want to one-to-one fetch mode or one-to-n fetch mode. So all those things can be defined it here as well. For now, I'll just keep it simple. I'll just delete this data source and I'll just go with only this particular data source. So in the fields, you can see, okay, I'm just having all the fields that are available right here. And in the field groups, if you want to add any of the field groups, you can just add it. Maybe the data entity can also be used in the forms as well, and it can be used in direct coding also. You can declare the data entity and you can just code also. That is possible. And here we have an option called keys. So this entity key will be automatically derived from the table level. So you would have created a primary key for the table, so it is automatically created. And here we have relations. So this is much useful in the case of when we define any composite entities. We'll have to get the relation between different tables actually. Okay, so in that case, I can just go for this relations, and I can just, instead of forming the relation in the direct table levels, I can just frame the relations in the entity level also. Even that is possible. And in the ranges, okay, so ranges recently I tried. So what is this? This is again one of the cool feature where we can just say what kind of a data should be exported. Okay, so you can just filter the ranges of the data available here as well. Okay, and we have something called delete action, state, and mappings. Okay, this corresponds to the same functionality of the tables as well. Okay, how you wanted to get the delete action to be done: cascade, none, or restricted, or cascade plus restricted, how you wanted to get along when you delete the data from the entities. Okay, all these things can be maintained here. Okay, and state machines which corresponds to workflows, and mappings which corresponds to the maps that you already defined. And apart from this, we have methods also available. So we have methods in the table level. Okay, now we have methods in the data entity level also. The reason is because before even the data gets inserted into the table, so in the methods node, you can just control the data by using certain methods. Here we have methods like, okay, map entity to data source, or map data source to entity, meaning to say that when you speak about the method called map entity to data source, so whenever the data is going to come inside, actually from the entity, it is going to come inside the data source. If I wanted to map any other fields, maybe I want to pick a value, they are entering the value called customer ID. But in my table, I'm storing it as the rec ID of the customer. So I can just manipulate, I can do a select statements to find the customer rec ID of the corresponding customer ID that is coming, and I can get it inserted within the table. Okay, that is possible by using this method. I think we have one more session for this to get along, to speak about, okay, different methods that are available in the data source. Fine. And we have certain events also. Similarly, on mapped entity to data source, this will be most useful for the entities, the standard entities you are defining, how to mitigate, like, okay, whenever I'm going to insert the data into the entity, so it will not be directly possible to create the methods in the standard entities. As you know, only the chain of commands or the event handlers is possible. So in the case of event handlers, you can just copy this. And I think, okay, we have one more session that is coming inside to how to deal with the standard entities. Okay, so if you have any customization in the standard entities, or how to write the methods in the standard entities, okay, we are going to see that as well. So this is about the entities. And when you right click and go to properties, okay, so the properties of this particular entities may be a little bit different from the tables actually. So here we have form reference. Okay, you can just say the form reference is going to be my DZ road transport charges. This will be useful when you wanted to open any target forms from the staging tables. So staging table will be having some data. from there you wanted to open the target form and see, okay, how the data looks like. Okay, in that case, you provide the form reference. When you click on the particular record and click on, okay, view the target something, it is opening that particular form. Okay, I recently tested this. And here you provide the master category, as we said. Okay, whatever the category you set, that comes up and sits here. And here we provide like a table. We provide like a similar primary keys that are available. And there is an option here called enable set-based SQL processing. So this is one of the option I was telling you, right? So when you wanted to insert bulk data into the system, so then you can go for this set-based entities, which is possible. And most probably it will be setting to auto, so we can take care automatically. And there is an option here called data management enabled features. When you set the data management to be, you marked certain parameters, right? You marked something check boxes like, okay, my data entity has to be part of the staging tables, and it should be part of the OData. So both will be marked as yes, and you'll be finding the public collection names. And by using the public collection names, we can just get the OData accessed outside. Okay, and you should be providing the configuration key for this particular entity, where it will say about, okay, this entity will be used for my configuration. Maybe if you're going to work on any IP side, so you can just provide the configuration key, which is be much useful in that case. And it can be a valid time state enabled, yes or no as well. So if you wanted to get your entities valid time state enabled, you can just do that as well. So these are very limited kind of a properties, unlike a tables, we have lengthier properties, right? But these are much useful. So if you're going to play around with these categories, and most useful is this one. So public collection names as well as the staging tables. Fine. So this is about the entities. And if you want to open up the staging table will be having the same kind of a fields from here to here. You could see. So here we have some definition groups and execution ID is selected and transfer status. Okay, these are the fields which is created by the system to maintain the different export and import operations. So execution ID, because the same kind of a data you can just insert multiple times, right? So if you're going to deal with only the index as row charges ID, it is going to get difficult. It is going to like duplicate records, or like, okay, index validations will come. So instead of that, okay, system has introduced two more fields called execution ID and definition group to be part of the indexes, so that however, like, okay, when you're trying to import it again and again, the execution ID and definition group will get default. Okay, and transfer status, which mean to say, okay, is there an error in the application? Sorry, error in the data that is getting transferred, or the data is validated, or the data is completed. So all these transferred status will be available here, and is selected as an option. So there is a checkbox that is available in the staging tables, where to say, okay, I can select and I can say validate that. So for that, okay, we have this is selected option. Okay, and this particular staging table should be tightly correlated with the entity. For example, if you feel I don't want this field to be available now. Okay, let's say I don't want vehicle type to be available exposed outside. Okay, so I can just simply try to delete the field here. And if I try to delete the field, still the staging table, when you open and see, the field will be available in this area. If you want to make the entity and staging table to be intact, there is an option here called right click and regenerate staging table or update staging table. So when you click on update staging table, it will try to just update the changes whatever you did into the staging table also. Okay, so every other time, don't keep your entity and the staging table a different way. So either like both the things should be in the same line. Okay, if you are going to expose 5 fields here, the 5 fields also should be part of the staging table. So if you miss out by just clearing of deleting the field from here and not generating in the staging table, like while you're going to get it imported or exported, there will be a problem. Okay, so it is going to try to get inside the entity, but the staging table, the value will not be available. Okay. So this is all about the entities. So we got it created now, and we have 2 privileges. So these privileges can be added to your roles, and you can just take it forward. Okay. So now since I added the entity and the staging tables are getting created, so we'll have to make sure the synchronization of the application happens. Okay. So we'll make sure the synchronization build is set to true, and we'll right click and go for build the application. So this build is going to now take all the changes whatever we did, and it's going to get it synchronized. This build activity is going to do 2 things. One is like, okay, it's going to take all the entities and the staging tables and put it along in the database as well. And after that, this entity is also getting as a metadata, right? So this metadata will be inserted into AOS service packages local directory and within your model files. Okay. So we'll wait for some more time. So to see that how this validation build activity going on. So once it is done, we'll be getting an operation like successful, like synchronization is done as well as the build is done. Since we placed synchronization, it's gonna take some time because it is hitting the database. So we'll have to wait for some time. Okay, it looks like now the database synchronization is also completed and the build activity is also completed. So now if everything has went well, so where we can see our data entities, we can just always go back to our application. And since we did a build, okay, we'll have to do a refresh to get the new session IDs that is available from the system, because the build activity is going to change in the direct web root folder. So the AOS service web root folder is there, right? Okay, there it's going to change it. So now it is going to refresh the application. Once it is refreshed, we can just go back to our data management UI and we'll verify our data entity has come or not. Okay, so the data entities will be available in the workspace section, and we have something called data management. So in this data management, first we'll go back to the data entities section, and this is where it's going to show about the list of entities that are available. So we can just speak about DEZ. So it is going to filter, and this is the entity we created now, right? So this is the target entity which has got created, and there is an option called modify target mapping. So if you want to modify any target mappings available, okay, you wanted to create a new field, okay, which is not currently pointing actually. So the functional consultants have a feasibility to modify the target mapping. So how, like, okay, how the field from the entity will be mapped on to the target field. Okay, this capability is a very good feature. The reason is because, okay, we don't need to rely on developers to get this small activity done. So we can just the functional consultant can directly go here and change the mappings if it is wrongly mapped, and they feel like, okay, if a new field has to be part of this entity also. Okay, and you can just go ahead and visualize the mappings by this. You have an option to, like, okay, select and delete the selections as well, and you can just take off the selection and you can just point out to a different selection. This is again a UI representation of how you wanted to map your entities. And there is an option called validate. It validates, okay, whether the data entity is perfectly fine or not. It's been used for import and export purpose. Everything is okay with the entity. This is a normal system check that happens. Next is we have entity structure. So in the entity structure, we can just see the target fields. Okay, the list of target fields. Basically, this doesn't give you much additional information, even though we have an edit operation available. So we'll not be able to really edit anything right here. This gives you a view of, okay, what is the target fields that are available. And next is that, okay, we have something called entity model view. So in the entity model view, we'll be able to see the entities per module wise. Okay, for a different modules, okay, what are the different entities you have created? For example, when I go to accounts receivable, it is going to show you the list of entities that are available only for accounts receivable. For example, I wanted to find an entity for customer group. I think cust group, I believe. I think the name, it is exactly expecting the name. So called customer group. It should be somewhere here. Okay, basically it is going to give you all the entities that are available within that particular module. Yeah, customer and group should be somewhere here in that case. Fine. Yeah, it is here. Customer groups is here. Customer group entity staging is available. So when you search it for customer groups, you'll be able to find the entity. Similarly, you want to find for HRM what are the different entities that are available. You can find it from here. This is again like nothing like a view option. Okay, fine. So now, since our entity is available, we can just try to create an export job for this entity. So let's say DZ, and let me say transport charges export. So there is an option called add entity here. So you can click on this add entity, and here I can just say DZ. So then it's going to give you the list of entities that are present with DZ. So I can just select this. And you remember, okay, we have a data sources, list of data sources I told you, right? So even you can create your own data source also. So you can just select this data source called CSV as an example now. And if you have any sample files, okay, depending on the sample file you wanted to build your structure, you can just do this. Otherwise, okay, you don't have any sample files to get it define a structure, you can just take this off. Okay, the system will automatically create the sample file for you. And there is an option called skip staging available here. So once you feel like, okay, I wanted to, there is a staging table available, right? I don't want it to enter the data into the staging table because I'm going to just do an export process. I can just click on this one, which is going to just export the data, and it's going to skip the staging table. And there is an option called full push or incremental push, which means to say when this will be useful when you're going to do any integrations, basically. So full push will be always it will be taking all the data from the system or from the table. It's going to push it along to the other ones, other areas. Okay, but incremental push, it will be enabling a change tracking in the system. What this incremental push will do is it is trying to get only the changed records for the second time, and it's going to push it along to the system again. And whether you wanted to export all the fields or you want to export only the importable fields. Okay, this you can define within the system as well again. Okay, so for now I'll just set it to all fields, and the skip staging I'll just leave it alone. I'll say add. So now the entity has got added right here. And if you want to see the mapping of the entity, we can just visualize, okay, how the entity source means the entity, it has been mapped to the target CSV file. Okay, and you can just again go ahead and control by using the field level also. You can say text qualifier, use the enum label rather than using the name of the enums. If that is an enum field, you can just use the label of the enum, and you can ignore the blank values. Okay, don't try to export that blank values. You can say that as well. Fine. So if everything is fine, and there is an option called add multiple. So you will have a feasibility like, okay, you can just pick it up from the application modules. Okay, which module you want to pick it up, or you wanted to find out from the which category. Depending on the categories, okay, you can filter the entities and you can select it. This is what the actual category is important for defining the entities actually. Okay, for now I'll just make it very simple. I'll just have only one entity here, and there is an option called export options. I'll say export now. Now this is going to export the data outside, and you could see, okay, there are 16 records that has got exported, and there is an option called download file. So where I can go and see and save this one. Okay, so these are the files before. I'll just delete this. Now DZ is the file. I can open this file, and these are the data we saw in the UI screen, right? Okay, so it has got created the new data right here. So now what I can do is I can just simply copy this data for import purpose. I can just simply enter the data inside. So now like RD16, I just create till 24. I can simply randomly, I can just change some data here, 33, 44, 55, 66, 88, 99. Some random data I changed it right here. In this case, I can just save this, and this file I can use it for import purpose now. Import purpose, it's like a DZ import. Okay, so for import again, like, okay, we can create a new one, like I called import job. I can say import entity charges. I can click on this add files, and after clicking on this add files, okay, I can just click on this entity called DZ, road transport charges, and there is an option called CSV. Okay, let me leave that like that, and you can just upload the file you created for import purpose. open this, and it is trying to get it mapped actually. So now the mapping is successful between the tables. It is fine. And there is an option called import. You can view the map as well. And there is an option called import now. We can just go ahead and say import now. Now the system will try to get the values imported into the table. So now it says like, okay, 24 is there in the staging, and 8 has got created and 16 has got updated. So I'll just say view staging. So here you could see, okay, all the records are got completed. Okay, so now every record has got completed now. And when you go back to your original tables, like in the module accounts receivable, okay, DZ transport charges, you'll be now able to see the tables. Actually, okay, you should have created it for the entity 30 actually. So if you wanted to modify the file, okay, again, I can go here and I can open up the charges import. So instead of having it as 20 from here, so I'll just say 30. So now I can just say, okay, 1 to be 300. The 300 type is not available. Okay, the customer group 300 is not available. So once you try to create a import job again, now we should see some validation errors. So I'll show you, okay, how to fix the validation errors within the staging table and try to re-import the data. So again, I'll create a new import job. And I'll click on the add files, TZ. So now I'll try to take the same file and click on the import options, and I'll try to import now. So now all the records should not pass. The reason is because, okay, we have one record that is getting failed. Yeah. So like one pending record and 23 record is updated. 23 is in staging and 23 has got updated. Okay. So how to like mitigate this error now? So you can go back to the view staging data now, and you should be seeing an entry with error. Okay. So you can just click on the edit, and you feel, okay, this is the problem. Now it should not be 300, and it should be coming as the 30, because in the lookup of the customer group, the 300 does not exist. So you can just click on this as 30, and you can just mark this record and validate. So once the validation is fine, so it will be saying the record to be validated. Validation is over. Then there is an option here called copy data to target. So you can click on this option called copy data to target and run this one. So now the record will get inserted into the database. Okay. So you could see here now everything has got completed. And there is an option called bulk update. So maybe you wanted to bulk update certain values. Okay, so you can just select this and say bulk update, and which field you wanted to get it updated. For example, I wanted to update this field called 50 above, and I wanted to have a value for all the selected things. I wanted to update it as 300 something. I say okay. So now it is getting updated as 300 here. These all the values I can just copy to data to target and run this. And when you open up the application, you'll be able to see the value called 300 is getting updated into that particular fields. So this I wanted to show you. The reason is because, okay, here you can see 300 has got updated here. So because staging table is plays a more vital role, and there is some option called mark duplicates. So you can just mark the duplicate values also, and after that you can just clear the duplicate values. For example, you can see mark duplicates and select marked recorder duplicates. From here you'll have to select, okay, which is the duplicate. So if you feel, okay, this is going to be the duplicate, the other records will get deleted. Okay, so automatically the duplicate records will get deleted. So this is how you play around with the staging tables. So this is one such concept, and I'll just finish up this demo by showing you with the copy data concepts actually. So now I created one such company, and there is an option here called copy into legal entity. And this is one of the feature where I can just copy the charges between the companies. So I can say copy charges, and from the USMF company, I can select literally, okay, list of other companies which is available. Sorry, it's not create entities. It is going to be select existing ones. So in the select existing ones, okay, you can just say, okay, now I want to copy the data to the USPA company and USSI company, and you wanted to copy to the USRT company also. So 3 companies at the moment, you can just copy the data. So what kind of entities you're going to add? So first example, because I'm going to have customers, so I just select a customer group, or like, okay, I can select this one only. I can select my DZ data. It will check if there are any dependencies. Okay, that dependent data is not available in the system, so then that will not create it. So there is an option called copy into legal entity. You can click on this. System will now try to go ahead and look over to different companies. Okay, you could see. Now it has just tried to loop through multiple companies called USSI or USRT as well as for the USPI. So if, just to verify, you can just change your company now to USRT, and you can verify the data should have been copied now in this particular companies. Yeah, so now we have the USRT. So in this USRT company, now you feel the data is getting changed. Okay. Okay. That's it. I think we have taken more time, I believe. So it's been 9:02. I'll have some quick 5 minutes for the discussion of the questions. Okay, if you have any questions, okay, we can just discuss it for now. Okay. So I could see a question called, okay, in modify target entity, I want to make my own sequence for the fields. How can I do that? Yes, you can just do that. Okay, if you're having your own sequence of fields, okay, there is a methods that are available, right? Map entity to data source and map data source to entity, and there is a method called post event methods are also available. So by using those methods, okay, you can just go ahead and you can try to add your own number sequence fields. Okay, so if you have your custom number sequence, you can add it, or you have an option to skip the number sequence also. If you want that to be happening, you can skip the number sequence as well. Okay, I have that question to be available in my notepad. Is there any other question which we can address? I can just quickly go through it. To make the entity exposed to OData, okay. What happens behind the scenes when you choose enable public API? Okay, that's been answered. In modify target entity, I want to make my own sequence of the fields. Okay, even that has been answered. Okay, fine, guys. I don't think any other questions that have been coming in. Okay, and thank you. So I know, like, okay, it has taken a few bit of time, maybe like additional some 5 to 10 minutes it has taken. And thanks for your patience watching this demo. And a few would have felt, okay, this is a very basics of the data entities. Okay, but actually, like, okay, we are going to cover detailed level of entities from the next session onwards. Maybe like, okay, we are going to try to get our methods concept done, as well as we are going to see, okay, how to handle the virtual fields, how to handle the composite kind of entity import, and everything. We are going to do it in the next sessions. This session I want to make sure, because okay, if someone is following the third session, they should not feel like, okay, what is an entity, and they should not be on the downside. So I know, like, okay, this is very basic session, so other people would have felt, okay, why this session to be available. But in the next session, it will be like you'll feel like a lot of technical concepts that have been coming in, more scenarios that may be coming into this picture. Okay. Thank you for joining this session today as well. And I think, okay, we'll plan for the next session on kind of a 25th or something, on where we will speak more about the data packages section, template sessions, as well as on the virtual fields and computer columns, how to handle a bit of coding within the data entities. Okay. Thank you for joining this session. Have a nice weekends. Have nice weekdays. Bye bye. Bye, guys.